Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. Now, I'm gonna just, full disclosure, say that I'm looking at this because I need a new collectible card game to play while I talk about video game news and the games that come out on a weekly basis on Steam when I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Why do I need a new game? Because I was playing Magic the Gathering Arena, and they just literally a couple hours ago decided to suspend my account for 7 days, saying that I was stalling, which I don't know what they really even mean by that, because there's timers in every collectible card game. When the timers run out, in Magic particularly, you use a timeout. You have a limited number of timeouts after a certain point, or if you just have a certain level of inactivity, you lose the game. It automatically concedes on your behalf. This is true in real world games as much as anything else. So I don't know what they're talking about. Like, their system exists, it exists that way. I've been playing Magic Arena the exact same way. I played Hearthstone for like 5 years before that. There definitely have been times where I have fallen asleep in the middle of a game, certainly, and when I've woken up, the game is automatically conceded on my behalf. So the idea that they're so flippant about it and that they emailed and said, well, this decision is final, it's like, well, you didn't even tell me there was a problem before you just said, oh, there's a problem and we found you guilty of this problem that can't possibly really exist in the system. It's not like I'm running a cheat software or anything. So I'll get into a rant if I go too far on that. But regardless, Magic sucked. In a lot of ways, anyways. It kind of sucked when I played it back in Ice Age. It kind of sucked in the Magic Arena format too. It was getting slightly better in all fairness, but it was Magic as the paper card game or as the digital format has always been incredibly greedy. And my biggest regret is that I even bought an entry level starter kit. But one of the things that Magic definitely was dropping the ball on as we start talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the fact that they were just not focused or capable of making a cell phone version of the game. Looking here, you can pretty much tell that Duel Links, which is the newest of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, there's been quite a few Yu-Gi-Oh! Games for consoles and portable consoles in particular, and each time there was a new Game Boy Yu-Gi-Oh! Game, the rules would slightly change. Now it seems like with Duel Links they have at least slightly committed to not just releasing a new client every year, although you are talking about Bandai, so there's no guarantee on that. But I'm playing this on Steam, and this is the PC port, for lack of a better descriptor, of the cell phone game. I would almost certainly agree with that most people should probably play it on the cell phone version, because you're not going to get a lot, by the looks of it, by having dead space on the left and right. But let's go through the intro. Here we have Seto Kaiba. If you're not familiar with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cartoon, then why would you even want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! At this point? It's so old. Although it is fair that you might be familiar with like the 5th generation Yu-Gi-Oh! Cartoon or the 2nd generation or 3rd generation and not recognize Seto Kaiba or any of those characters, although that still seems unlikely. Morahaha Yu-Gi-Oh! Morahaha Yugi, when I defeat you, you will call me the king of games.
Let's see if you have the cards to challenge me.
I will say that when you first launch this on Steam, it's incredibly loud. I had to turn it down externally through the Windows Volume Manager all the way down to 1%, and it was not in full screen, but there was a settings option in the game to actually change the resolution in full screen, just not the audio, which is weird. I guess you don't need subtitles because they're going to show you the text anyways, and I imagine you might have a light version of the cell phone in which the voice acting here is not included. You're going to have a case where the amount of spoken dialogue is going to drop really drop really, really low. And you probably are not going to hear too many voice lines after this beginning. So first big choice, do you want to play as Seto Kaiba or Yami Yugi? Let's play as Yugi. You're going to unlock the other characters later on. I've actually played this on my cell phone before. There's a decent amount of kind of like daily quests and reasons why it would make sense to play this game on a daily basis.
The moment I finally take down Yugi and regain my top dueling status. Let the epic battle begin. Duel.
So we're going to reduce our opponent's life points to 0. They start with 3,000.
It's my turn.
One way I've heard it
I summon a monster in attack position.
described is that,
I end my turn.
and take note that the art on these cards are fairly bad, that they really need to put in, I don't know if Bandai could really afford it, but they need to put in a lot of money to just redraw all the characters. Look at that, it automatically drew instead of having me drag the mouse, which I was about to do. The art printed on the cards are fine. The game is literally playing itself. But the 3D models could use polish, and they're always just kind of iterated upon the previous games. And this entire playfield would work if it was just stretched out more. It would work perfectly fine, but since this is for a tall cell phone screen, they've tilted everything to try and get all of the 5 lanes here listed, and there's only like 4 lanes in the back, where I've definitely seen a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh games where there were 5 lanes on the second row also. I think there's supposed to be 5, so that's a little weird. So actually I wouldn't be surprised if this is 4 lanes for characters and a discard pile. There's also no depiction here of a fusion deck or a side deck. That is one of the things that's weird about Yu-Gi-Oh! In particular, is that the different versions of the game do play so incredibly different. Whereas, if you compare it to Magic's big card games pretty much play the same. It's just the amount of cards you can have in a deck sometimes change depending on whether you're playing Commander versus Standard versus Historic versus Modern, and what cards are playable. And I would say Hearthstone is the best, since it's a digital only game, of keeping everything under control. My main goal was to play Magic until the Marvel card game that's currently under development by a company called Second Dinner came out, but that's out the window. So we may just bounce around to some different cards. I don't think I'm going back to Magic though, after a 7-day suspension, because who's to say I don't get suspended and banned again. I'd rather have the account just sit there and potentially give it away to somebody else or sell it for what little it would be worth. So I started saying, one of the things I've heard Yu-Gi-Oh! Described as just the ultimate power creep card game, because there's no mana requirement at all to summon a monster. No energy, no currency at all. All you have to do is have less than 4 stars in here, and apparently you can zoom in, but can you drag? No. So you can only zoom into the art, and that's it. So if you have 4 stars or less, you can play a creature in a normal summon. Some of them will have effects. Yeah, you cannot drag this, not even with like the middle mouse button, or a mouse wheel. Interesting. They'll have effects that in this interface they're repeating here, and some of those might change the way things are summoned. And then if you want to summon anything that's a 5, 6, and I think 7-star, you have to sacrifice one 4-star creature, or you have to sacrifice a creature, 2 creatures that are equal to the number of stars. I can't even remember. It's been so long since I last played Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you want to summon like an 8-star creature, then I think you have to summon something with 8 stars. Wow. I really have forgotten how to play the game, which might as well be for the better. The damage you inflict to your opponent's life P is equal to the amount of your monster's attacks exceeds your opponent's monster's attacks. Some basic things here. So my 1400 attack beat his attack, and thus I did damage to his life P because they were both in attack position.
Here I go. It's my turn. I end my turn.
But because there's no mana to summon any creatures just constantly in new printings and new expansions are more and more powerful than the previous ones. So a first generation Yu-Gi-Oh cards are relatively not that useful in gameplay. They might be valuable somewhat in collecting, but you have to kind of always stay up with it and buy more cards. Whereas if you were playing something like the Pioneer format in Magic or the Wild format in Hearthstone, you might not need the new card so much. The level number of stars on your card is a higher 5 or higher. To summon monsters that are level 5 or higher, you must tribute, send to the graveyard one or more monsters on your field. The summon method is called tribute summon. For this tutorial, the monsters you need to tribute have been prepared for you. So, yeah, it's showing things. You must tribute 2 monsters to tribute summon this monster. And I believe that's because these 2 monsters equal 5 stars.
My ever-faithful companion, Dark Magician.
But then you get into this problem. If you just wanted to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And you didn't care about the anime, this is not going to be the interface for you. Because you are going to get these kind of cool scenes that are going to take a while. And if you're playing 100 games in a month, you're going to see Dark Magician summoned quite a bit, unless there is some options to turn that off, which there probably isn't, considering how few options I've seen from the main menu. And so now he's going to directly attack with the life points and win the game in 2 moves. And then you get an anime scream.
I was willing to risk everything to win, but I still couldn't pull it off.
Kaiba, you will never win if you give in to hatred.
So, yeah. It's a little silly. It gets a little too cartoony, a little too anime-esque for somebody who just wants to be a serious card game player. And I would argue that there is probably... One sec. There's probably too much anime in this and not enough game for most people, and too much craziness. One of the things I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! Though is the craziness. The idea that you can have 5 pieces of the Exodia cards and just win regardless of what your opponent is doing. This Duel World is a VR realm within Duel Links. Thanks to cutting-edge online network, duelists around the globe can gather here. Now the world, the universe of dueling can be expanded forever. Why don't you hop into a duel right now? So none of this is canonical, as it were. And this definitely does look exactly like the cell phone version. And like typical free-to-play cell phone games, you've got your premium currency and your non-premium currency. You've got a level up system that gives you some rewards. You've got some different places you can go. And you've got some random enemies. But only in certain areas are the random enemies that you're playing actual people and not bots. And so you're going to have a lot of just random NPCs that you're going to play. And you can see Josh here does not have any lines of dialogue. But this does let you just... this duel can be skipped. Let's do it. Let's just go through all the tutorial. Like, I like that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so crazy. I'm not sure I like this specific form of Yu-Gi-Oh! But this might just be what the standard is. And then he did get a line of dialogue there. It probably would fix some of the problems with some overpowered early generation cards if you can only play 4 cards on the field. But that kind of sucks too, because you really want to be able to play like the Exodia cards and the God cards. Here you can see we started with 1,000 life points instead of 2,000, which is what the demo at the beginning did. So this is a sped up experience. So we just casted a spell and put it in the ground, in the central. Now we're going to put a trap card face down. The idea of setting cards face down is genius for Yu-Gi-Oh! But it only works because there are no mana generating land cards or anything like that, because it would be fairly easy to cheat, and I suppose it still is fairly easy to cheat and put a card that can't be face down in the trap zone. But one of the things I really like about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you can put your creatures in a face down defensive position, and then their attack is fought against the defense of the face down character, and if the defense is higher of a defense monster than the attack of the attacking monster, then the attacking, I believe, opponent takes damage. Or is it the attacking monster that takes damage, or both? I can't remember. It's been a while. So here we're going to activate this trap, and that's going to give 500 attack until the end phase. There's a draw phase, a main phase 1, a play phase, main phase 2, and a end phase. That's fairly common in video games. And the phases in Yu-Gi-Oh! Make a lot of sense, and they work fairly well. Here you can see that the lines of dialogue are very generic and do not synchronize at all. And so you immediately get leveled up to level 2, and as a free-to-play game, it's giving you a little bit of welfare, 10 premium gems, and the next tier you'll get a card and then some kind of gold item, and then I believe this unlocks another deck, and then 15 more gems, and then a card, and then another deck, and then you just keep going down that route until, I think fairly quickly, in less than a month of doing daily quests, you probably would hit the maximum level of whatever this is. This is probably a game that is more designed around, level 45. It might be a lot harder to get to level 45 than it is to get to level 44, though. They might be exponentially more expensive. But even at that, you're only getting at most 250 gems, where we'll probably look at the store and find that there's very little there. And then there's this dual assessment score system, which is unique to this game as far as I can tell. And it gave me some kind of keys. Keys may open loot boxes, or be some kind of currency, some kind of dust-like currency, to make you craft cards. Yeah, if you really, really wanted to play this and try, you probably will fairly quickly get all the cards, which is a problem with that you would have trying to do a game like Hearthstone and Magic, because they're constantly just adding new cards in Magic, and Hearthstone there's enough cards that it would be a little bit difficult, not impossible, but difficult. Next, I'll explain your stage. Your stage ranks up as you complete stage missions. Let's check out stage missions. So, click here. You just cleared a mission. Let's claim your reward. 50 gems extra. And then we go up a stage. You've completed all missions. You are now stage 2. Phrasing it stage probably means that the opponents now are level 2 also, because you're at level 2 as it says over here, but this says mission stage 2. The shop is now available. You can purchase card packs and items from the shop. At your stage, as your stage ranks up, new facilities and characters will become available. The shop is now open. Let's go check it out. So, very free to play game. Like, second thing they do here is tell you to go check out the shop. And it doesn't look like it's going to let me do anything else. So, we swipe the screen. And this is a different area that's, I guess, under construction. We swipe this screen again, and here we have the card shop. And I can't click on anything else, so we're just here. Buy cards and packs and strengthen your deck. This is the tutorial box, the Ultimate Rising. You can use gems you just received to purchase a pack. So, yeah, free to play, but then they want you to use real money. And they're going to leave you with 10 extra gems, so you always feel like you have more, or a reason to buy more. So, purchase this pack. And here's the little Kaiba characters. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not really the card game I would recommend for kids to play. I definitely have them play Pokemon, the card game, first, and if they're still in the collectible card games after 3 or 4 years, and then they're starting to get bored with Pokemon, that might be a point in which you might push them to Yu-Gi-Oh! But honestly, there's a very good argument to not have kids play collectible card games anyways. It's just too expensive and just ever going. It would be much better to have them play a weirder, lesser known deck building game. And this is an ultra rare quality card, tier card. Add those cards you just obtained to a deck. You can access the edit deck function through the Duel Studies deck editor. Use cards you obtain in the game to build your own unique deck. But then they also kind of push you towards playing pre-build one. That's it for the tutorial. You should probably work on ranking up your stage first. Complete stage mission. Joey will appear in stage 3. Get gems and other special rewards by defeating Joey. You're not really following the storyline of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series, but you're kind of following the general through line. You're going to probably fight Joey and your friends first, and then eventually work your way up to Seto Kaiba, and maybe even some of the other enemies that show up. Listen up, duelists. You must have realized by now. Notice he's not speaking out loud either. You've realized by now that you've arrived in a world of Duel Links. Duelists have come to test their skills in the next evolution of dueling. This is the perfect place to determine who is the real champion. Who will be the one who will rule overall, who will wear the crown of the Duel World Kingdom. The Duel World King. Man, I'm having trouble reading. Duel World is divided into different stages. Reach the final stage and claim the throne. Defeat all who stand in your way of your dreams. Duelists come to the Duel World for your greatest challenge. Test yourself to your breaking point. Dare to become the Duel World King. Ha ha ha. And honestly, I don't think there really is much of an end game here. So this is the new venue for dueling. And the place to determine who the Duel World King. Who will be the Duel World King. As you know, I never run from a challenge. To prove I am a true duelist, I will compete with all my strength. Along with my dear friend, Dark Magician. I suppose it's worth mentioning that Yami Yugi is the ancient Egyptian, like, pharaoh spirit inside of the body of Yugi, the anime kid. And I guess Yugi himself kind of gets second fiddle in any kind of events. Interesting, they've decided to just throw up global chat, so that's going to be risky as a YouTuber. So here we have a notification. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. First of all, complete the missions to increase your stage level. Following features will be unlocked by increasing your stage level. Character unlock missions, events and campaigns, player versus player duels. They do have a nice system here where you can't just immediately make an account and play player versus player. Other duel worlds from other series. Events will happen. There is always kind of this problem with the idea of events if you're late to the game, and let's be honest, I am late to the game. This would be most free-to-play card games probably would be best if you played them from day one. That's why the Marvel card game I do plan to try and get into the beta and play from day one, because if you're not playing from day one, you're going to have to catch up, and you're just going to miss events, and it's not going to be as nice of a time as it could be. We can see July 20th. That's pretty much the day I'm recording this, so yep, they are still supporting this game. These are just daily notifications, by the way, that most free-to-play games give you. So we have a little girl challenger. We have, I can't even read that, what this little hologram is, but that's like a secondary way to play, I remember. And then you've just got other people kind of everywhere, and you play up into that. Let's see. We visited the shop, so we get 15 gate keys. And we completed all of the stage missions, so we get 14 red gate keys. And that, just collecting those two things moved us up to stage 3. You've completed all missions, you're now at stage 3. And so now you have a gate. Legendary Duelist unlocked. Linking with Joey Wheeler. There is a heavy amount of this that is really just single player, though. Like, only the player versus player is not single player. Which that probably is better for a cell phone plan if you don't have free unlimited fast internet, but it's not really that realistic to what your experience would be if you actually were into playing Paper Yu-Gi-Oh! Because kids playing Paper Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's pretty much it. It's just kids. Kids or people that were kids when Yu-Gi-Oh! Originally came out, or people that decided that they preferred Yu-Gi-Oh! Over Magic. The fact that you can just attack every turn in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or in Magic you can potentially have 100 monsters on the field and still there's no reason for your opponent to attack any of those monsters and no reason for your opponent to attack. 100 is a major exaggeration, but yeah, Magic Arena in particular just shows the flaws inherent with the rules and the systems they have, because there's just no limit in as far as the number of monsters you can have on field, where 5 is going to be the most in Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's no reason to attack something that has a higher attack than you, and so many characters have death touch in Magic that if you do attack, and even if it does have less attack power, it doesn't matter. You still would end up having your monster die because of the death touch effect, which is just kind of overboard. Whereas if you in Yu-Gi-Oh! Have a monster, your opponent has a monster that's stronger than anything you can play, all you can do is put a card face down in defense position and buy yourself another turn. And that works fairly well. And you never run into a situation like you do in Magic where you just have no lands to summon, to get any mana to summon any other characters. All of that just doesn't exist, so it's a much more streamlined experience. Whereas Hearthstone and Magic both have a problem of games taking potentially 30 to 40 minutes and then you just lose. And Magic Arena makes that even worse because they want you to have 15 wins a day. Whereas Hearthstone really only wants you to have maybe 5 or 6 wins a day. It's just, a lot of these games want all of your money. A lot of these games want all of your time on top of your money. And it's just a little crazy. It definitely feeds into the stereotype that Dungeons and Dragons players and comic book nerds and those nerds, Magic the Gathering players in that same group, those nerds are just so obsessed about their one thing, and that they just spend every penny they have on that, and they're just not well rounded. Whereas video game fans in general, we're not like that. There may be some Halo bros out there from like 10 years ago that still just really play Call of Duty and Halo, but the vast majority of people have hundreds if not thousands of games available for them to play. There's plenty of free-to-play cell phone games out there, and we typically do tend to bounce around between at least a few games, if not quite a lot. Let's move forward. Ouch, if you transported me again before I'm ready, I'll pummel your processors. So this is Duel World. Kind of looks like the town of Domino. And that means I feel right at home when I try to become the Duel World king. So all your other duelists better watch out, because Joey Wheeler's coming. But I can't believe Kaiba didn't send me a personal invite. I'll show him. Joey Wheeler has now appeared at the gate. Okay, visit the gate and challenge legendary duelist. The gate is a device that allows you to access directly challenge a legendary duelist. You need gate keys to use the gate. Increase your stage to access a variety of legendary duelists. So these are basically the bosses of the stage. Gifts will now occasionally appear in the Duel World as exclamation points. And so these I don't think have been done yet. But we have some special login a total of 2 days. Apparently it thinks I've logged in 2 days. And unlock Yami Yugi. So this gave us a new icon to change your icon. And 50 gems. Like, he really is just throwing so much in front of you at the beginning. And that was just a reward. Right, so what I wanted to do is click here. And let's just see settings. We have points of caution. Which is... Text can be freely entered for the following sections of this application. Deck list, global chat. Please note that the text in here above sections will be displayed to other players. Please do not enter content that can identify or enable access to an individual. So just hidden under there is like, don't put anything personally identifiable. So when you're actually in the game, you do have sound effects. I could probably turn off, hide the global chat. Allow saving unlimited decks is off. There's day-night cycles. We can change it from player view to top-down view. And activation confirmation can be a toggle button. We can make a little bit of changes here. But what I think we would really run into, see, you can, this is that icon, we have only one right now to use, is I would have to potentially, the achievements are tied into Steam achievements apparently. Items, this is all the items you have in inventory. It's kind of weird to have an inventory at all in a game like this. And then this is notifications, and this is exchange tickets and gift boxes, which are probably a reward. You can see the chat is off. This up here are some challenges to get more things. And then we're at the gate, where this is the PvP arena, so this is probably a real player. Where this is a shop, and take note that there's nobody there. And then this is the Duel Studio, and this is probably not a real player. And this is where you would go to make deck lists and customizations and things like that, which there definitely is something lost in the feel of playing a digital game versus playing with actual paper cards, which inherently that is kind of the catch-22. If you were a paper Yu-Gi-Oh fan and you like to touch the cards, you probably are going to manhandle the cards and ruin them or damage them a little bit, which would then make you eventually want to buy replacements for those cards. Whereas you don't have that problem in the digital versions of card games, but then you also don't have the feel of actually owning something, even if the thing you're owning is really just a penny's worth of paper. Let's see. Mission tips. And what is this? What is this going to take us to? Tour guide from the underworld. Hello, and welcome to the Duel Trials. Here you have fun learning how to duel through the duel quizzes and trying out different decks. Okay, so these are puzzle duel quests. Take note, this is also kind of a problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that you gotta be fairly happy with them getting maybe a little lewd in the characters, although that often is very much censored in the Western versions of the cards, but also a little bit scary and demonic here. Here she's got a flaming eyes skull and a skull bag and a monster brooch. And they're calling it the underworld, but you might as well call it hell. There's a lot of things that got localized out in Yu-Gi-Oh! In particular, as far as just people originally dying completely in the manga if they lost a game, and just a ton of violence in the manga, and even in the anime that cleaned up a lot of the the age inappropriateness for the West, at least content. There's still, in the anime version in Japan, was a lot of stuff that needed to be cleaned up and censored for the kid-friendly version of the Western version of Yu-Gi-Oh! And in later generations of the series, once they got very, very far away from the original manga, then there was a lot less of that. Duel trials are where you can try a variety of themed duels, take a challenge, and learn how to duel. It also gives you the opportunity to try out special duels. Duel trials modes have the following modes: loner deck duels, duel quizzes, and a tutorial. Okay? So, loner decks unlock at level 4. So I can do a duel quest, and the tutorial probably is the same tutorial we've already done. What you can't do here, though, is stretch out the screen. And that seems like that is a real problem. And some of these are, like, super easy. Like, so, what I was thinking of doing, and I don't know if I can really do this, because I can't, if I could rotate the image, which I could in my recording software, that would take up a lot less room. Here we have a duel log, which is kind of useful, but it's not until we like click on a card that you have something over here of useful. So this is a level 3 monster that we could normal summon. This is level 4 monster that we can normal summon. And auto mode is now toggleable. There's nothing I think special we could really do with any of this. Then just end the turn. Let's see. Go to battle phase instead of ending the whole turn. And then don't change phase. Actually attack. And see, she had 1700 life points, so if I'd chosen the other character, I would have not had enough attack, I think. So, interesting little move there. There would be a way I could stretch out the screen, but it would require stretching out the entire image. Let's see if we can do this. Transform. Edit transformation. See if I can do this without really messing things up. Transform it. See. Come on, why is that not working? Skill fitting. Well, usually in OBS this would be easier to do. Have that locked? No. Yeah, I'm getting too ambitious here. maybe I can't change it. Like, as it is. See if we can type in the numbers. There we go. That's the problem. So, yeah, if I tried something sort of like that, and then something like that, I could, in theory, get this slightly better and stretch out the character, Yugi, for instance, a lot more, and it probably wouldn't even look that bad, but it definitely would be noticeable. It would make characters and the cards look very stretched out, because you're basically asking to stretch it out to 3 times its own width. So there's kind of just this inherent problem with this specific game, Duel Links. If you're going to play it on a cell phone, it works well. But if you're going to play it on... all of these are fairly simple puzzles that teach you things that we have yet to do, like change from attack to defense position, select your targets, destroying a powerful monster, destroying a spell card, destroying a trap card. We're really not getting very deep into it. New data has been added. Please download the data from the title screen. And so now, immediately it's decided to update. And see, this is weird because this part of the screen is stretched out, but that's it. That is completely it. And there was a huge loading section before about that too, and I want to ignore that. Let's try and defeat Joey Wheeler, and then I think that's pretty much as far as we can go. Because, well, this is fine for Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think is the way I want to go. Can't get to the next step unless you defeat me first. Come on, show me what you got, or you ain't getting past me.
Right up so I can knock you down.
So without making any changes or anything at all, I'm just going to take on Joey, and I probably will have no problem defeating him in the first, like, real legitimate game. Take note that you flip a coin to choose. The top-down perspective I do agree with way more.
That you duel me, and it's time to pay up.
We have 4,000 life points in this game.
I summon a monster in attack position.
You're going to hear a lot of that where they just enunciate what's going on. And you really don't need that in your life. But I don't know if I saw an option to turn that down. 3D visuals, character lines. Yeah, you could see. You could turn off the character lines, I suppose. You can surrender if you want to lose. So you have a 900 attack creature. And then we have block attack, which is a spell, which I think you would want to set to activate. So we'll set that down for free. Again, no mana here, making it a much simpler game. Actually, I didn't need block attack because this has 1200 attack. Anyways, the numbers started in the 100s. Even like one of the lowest cards has like 100 attack or 100 defense, which I think was a mistake on their part. They probably should have started with a very, very low number if they knew that this was going to be as wild of a power creep game as it turned out to be. And I think they probably should have known it was going to be a wild power creep game, considering how they really didn't know what any of the cards did, even when the anime was airing. They just kind of made it up as they went along, and so there's this long history of what does this one do? Guess we can activate this as a continuous spell, because that will just give me more power every attack. I think you can have 3 cards in a deck. There, it's jumping to battle mode automatically. There's a little too many buttons to click, and that is the problem with any collectible card game, is that if you have to click a button to resolve, if you have to click a button to pass the turn, if you have to click a button to do this and that, a lot of this stuff needs to be automated. That's one of the beauty of a collectible card game, and I just don't think that even if you were playing the paper card game and you did need to say those things out loud, in the digital version you don't. You can see this is the discard phase. So they are just playing with 4 cards on the field, which is not the way I recall Yu-Gi-Oh! Being played. And take note, that only took a couple of turns. You can save a replay. Magic Arena doesn't have that. You've got a nice little log. Magic Arena doesn't have that. Even though Magic the Gathering as a card game has been around forever, they really failed to pay attention to what other people had been doing and even stay up with that idea. Hearthstone doesn't have a save log ability either, which it kind of stinks. So no way I lost, but that doesn't mean I'm giving up on my dream to be the Duel World King. I've never surrendered before, and I ain't starting now. When I duel, I always give it up my all. And fighting on my side, by my side, is the one and only Red Eyes Black Dragon. So Joey Wheeler and Joey's deck are now unlocked after defeating him. See, here's characters from the future generations of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. And then new cards. And then we have to download the additional data. They want 2.8 gigs. This is one of those games also that is just like, yeah, you download about 2 gigs just to get the intro, and then you need to download even more gigs to go even further. And while you're downloading, they give you this little mini game where you can flip over cards, which is quite nice, so that you could learn a lot of these cards. A lot of these cards are very much like first generation cards, though. Skyscraper might be like a second or third generation in my mind. Elemental Hero Neos is like a second or third generation card, but probably compared to the real world paper expansions, there's quite a few cards that are just not here or just not going to be shown off right now, probably in part because they're in the download. This is inherently the big question that gets thrown in front of people, though. If you're on a cell phone, if you're playing on a PC, if you're playing on a console, and you're shown such a large download with such a large wait time, a lot of people are just going to choose to walk out the door. And in this case, there's nothing wrong with Duel Links, but the main problem is the screen resolution, the fact that it's a kid-focused game, that it's probably not very strategic as far as a card game. There is strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh! For sure, but it nowhere as much as there is in Hearthstone or Magic. And so it just always ends up in my mind as the third on the list as far as priorities, and it still feels that way in this case too. So while me being in my opinion unfairly suspended from Magic Arena, which apparently there's a fairly large list of people who have been unfairly suspended from Magic, both the card game physically and digitally, did give me the opportunity to come and play this and do kind of a spotlight on this. I don't think this is the game for my daily streams. It's just a little too kid focused for me. Also, it's a little too free to play for me too. Like, a lot of these free to play games are a little too free to play, and I don't want to get into a card game that is going to want me to spend $100 a month, which is Magic Arena. They wanted you to spend like $100 every expansion minimum, and that's just way too expensive. So instead of waiting for this to download, which me talking here has only gotten us a sixth of the way there, I'm just going to go ahead and say that's going to be the end of the spotlight. I guess if your kids did want to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, Duel Links is the best way. There are several other Yu-Gi-Oh! Games out there that cost a base amount of money. Those are the older ones as far as I can tell, and they would not be the recommended ones for you to play. One would have liked it if you could buy a base Yu-Gi-Oh! Game and then have no microtransactions inside of it, but this is a collectible card game, and almost any collectible card game is going to have microtransactions. Maybe there is some white whale out there that only has cosmetics, but I've yet to find it. And even if there is something like that, I don't know if the player base is going to be that high. Player base in this game in particular is not so much a concern, at least in this first stage where you're playing mostly against bots. But eventually, once you've done all the story, you will want to play player versus player. There may not be that many player versus player people in the future, particularly if Bandai decides to release something different. But personally, the one thing that would convince me to come back is let me play with the way I recall it to be played, with 5 monster slots instead of 4, and 5 trap slots instead of 4. I think maybe I'm just wrong about that, actually. I could just be straight wrong about that. That may have been never the way you played Yu-Gi-Oh! I only watched the cartoon, and so I very well may not have ever really understood it. And certainly a lot of the Game Boy ones did change the rules every iteration. But the thing that they could definitely do that would get me to play this is just figure out a way to make the screen bigger, so that they're not just taking up a chat log here and a screen here. Just let it stretch to a 1080p resolution. Well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.